Nigerians to start producing locally produced. It's very sad that at this point we're not producing toothpicks.
The issue there is that there are things that, yes, I know we need to reduce our import, our reliance on import, but we also have a lot of things that we don't have it locally. We have to go and import them before we're able to make some of the production that we need in the country. So some of those goods that are a necessity that we cannot have them locally produced, if we encourage government to bring down the cost of the import costs, so that when they come
Ali,
into
the question
country,
is, what products can we not produce here in Nigeria? Which of all the things that we import can we not produce in Nigeria? If you're talking cars,
we've not gotten to
can
that
we
stage.
not? We've
We
seen
only
people do
assemble
it
here.
here. We only assemble.
Yeah.
God. Well, God needs to help us, because we need to start moving from that, importation level to be actual producers ourselves. We need to get to that level, because I think it's one of the issues that China had at a point where the economy was really, really bad, and before you know it, they turned things around for themselves.
Turning things around in Nigeria has a lot of things to consider. Now, for instance, you talk about China. Before you have a rejig in terms of your industry, in terms of your trade and investment, there are a lot of other things that you have to look at. You see, we talk about the cost of fuel and the unification of forex. It has bearing in almost every aspect of our life endeavor. So also, now if you look at education, if we take education for instance, you work or you invest more in education, you give education a lot of attention and the needed funding, you discover that the impact is going to spread across almost every facet of our activities in this country. Now you talk about we producing on our own. How do we produce? It's by us having to improve our education, that our people can learn how to produce. If we don't learn how to produce, even if we have the raw materials, we have the resources, we won't be able to produce, simply because we don't know how to produce.
Yes.
Most of our people go out there to perform well because they move there and they find the
already working system.
System for them to just function. Like the person that Buhari brought to head our automobile whatsoever in Nigeria, Zelani Aliu, who designed a lot of Chevrolet vehicles in the United States of America. He's a Nigerian from Sokoto. He went there. He was doing excellently well, designing different kinds of vehicles. But now that he came to Nigeria, the only effort he could do was to set up an assembly plant in Nigeria. It's not as if we have a Jakuta. Still that we
could actually produce stuff with it.
That place is more or less dead. I know the Buhari administration had to pay another huge sum of money to reclaim that property there, because it was
though we
sold
still
off.
haven't seen the reclamation.
So we need to do a lot. So it's not about the import alone. Yeah, we can start from there. Bring down the cost of importing major goods, especially raw materials. Because I don't encourage us to talk about foreign goods, finished goods. We should encourage in terms of
raw materials. We bring
so that
it
we'll
here
come
and
and process it or refine it here in our own country. It's talking about refining ordinary crude. Are we even refining it here in Nigeria? No, it's not as if we don't have the capacity to do, or we don't have the money to do. The cost that we incur over the years in terms of paying for subsidy would have been enough for us to set up brand new refineries. If an individual like Dangote will be able to set up a refinery that costs around 19 billion US dollars, what are we saying? Nigeria can do more than that as a country. So we have to look at these things holistically, and that is why policy of government need to be deliberate. They need to look at all the angles that their policy will affect. You should bring things that will transform Nigeria.
All right, moving on to the next headline.
Yeah, we'll have this particular one that says federal government to generate they target 12 billion naira from new vehicle tax. The federal government is set to make about 12 billion naira a year from the 1,000 naira proof of ownership certificate verification fee motorists are to pay. Last week, the Permanent Secretary, Lagos Minister of Transportation, Abdul Hafiz Toriola, disclosed this. He stated that this certificate would help vehicle owners and the government assure the integrity of all vehicles registered on the National Vehicle and Identification Scheme database and track car theft and recovery of stolen vehicles. He said, to this end, the federal government has introduced the issuance of annual proof of ownership certificate for all registered vehicles. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, there were 11.76 million vehicles in Nigeria as of second quarter of 2018, and the vehicle per population ratio was put at 0.06 for the period per various report. This is for 2018, and that's 5 years ago. I'm sure now it has increased, even though the NBS are yet to give us a current statistic, but I'm very sure it's gonna increase because everyone wants to get a vehicle. Now if you see people trying to raise money, I want to buy a vehicle, although the cost of fuel now will discourage some from buying vehicle. They would rather jump onto the commercial services. So a report by Punch recently stated that a total of 192,287 vehicles were imported through the Port and Terminal Multipurpose Limited into the country in the first 10 months of 2021, while only 114,159 vehicles came through the said terminal in the same period of 2022. So there was a decrease in terms of that. Toriola stated that the proof of ownership certificate will serve as official documentation for a vehicle's legal ownership. He said the POC will contain vital information, including the vehicle's registration details, such as license number plates, model, year of manufacture, in addition to the owner's name and address. Having critically reviewed the challenges encountered in ensuring the promotion of safety and security of lives and property through the issuance of the certificate of proof of ownership certificate nationally and especially in our dear state, talking about Lagos, the Joint Tax Board in its communique issued at the end of the emergency meeting held on May 9, 2023 adopted and made a resolution that proof of ownership be issued to motorists on an annual basis nationwide. This is one form of generating revenue by the government, although it will also have a bearing in terms of our security, because if you look at it critically, they are very emphatic in terms of saying this will also take away issue of doubt in terms of ownership of vehicles. Yeah.
You know, at this point in time, we already have a proof of ownership in your vehicle particularly.
Yes, of course.
It's already there. So one now begins to wonder, aren't we confusing ourselves? Aren't we duplicating? Because why do we have the proof of ownership that we already it's already in our papers? So why? And then you renew your papers every other year, right? So we renew the papers every other year. Why do we have to pay an extra 1,000? You know, earlier this year there was an increment in how much you pay for your vehicle particulars.
Yeah.
There was an increment. I can't remember if it was a 50% increase in how much you pay for your particulars, right? So why exactly are we having one segment of it? Why are we trying to pay more for one segment, which is already in the document that we have, even though that's not the focus of the conversation this morning? But that particular directive is what has got me in a bit of a bind, because according to the VIO and the road safety and all the others, right? You have your driver's license. These are particulars that you have to have. 6 vehicle particulars that you must always have. You have your driver's license. You have your certificate of roadworthiness. You have your vehicle registration. You have your insurance certificate. You have your proof of ownership, and you have your Hackney permit. Is another document on Lagos roads anyway. That's for Lagos roads. So now one begins to wonder, this Hackney permit, right, is a document that is required to drive freely on Lagos roads without any form of harassment, which is now very, very confusing on its own. Is this the president's style? Because I don't know when this Hackney permit was issued, but it is very, very known to Lagos. Now we're seeing him coming again with another policy.
You know, this
initiative
for the proof of ownership. I know once if you just purchase a vehicle, you could do the change of ownership. Our phone line has been buzzing. We've not opened the phone line yet, but it has been buzzing. I think we should do well to open phone line so that our listener can also interact with us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
My name is Chris. I'm friend from Chris.
All right. We're having difficulty hearing you. Can you speak a little bit louder?
Hey, my name is Chris.
All right. Go
Okay,
ahead.
Prince, go ahead.
Okay. Talking about inflation.
Finding it
Hello?
difficult to hear you. Do well to call back if you can, and if you also have anything you want to say, you want to contribute on our conversation this morning on Business Around Town on VOP 96.1, you can use the studio line to call us 0700 010 961 961 0700 010 961 961. That is the studio line to get through to us. So we're talking about the issue of revenue generation here.
Yes.
You know, yes, it's a way of generating huge revenue for the government. But again, I was saying that if you purchase a new vehicle or you buy a used vehicle, you could go do your change of ownership and you have that proof of ownership. But this time around, once you do that proof of ownership, it's your vehicle. Okay, we have a call. Hello.
Hello, Prince.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, I say I'm Chris.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I say thinking about inflation.
Yes.
See, if you did not Nigeria in this into this country, we will not make any forward of producing anything from ourselves.
Okay.
Because as the happiness in this country, we have the brains, but what is stopping us from producing because our country is not conducive to production. If I want to start it now, apart from agriculture, if I want to produce something like anything now, the kind of fact that they say on you, they discourage you from importing anything, from producing anything. So that is why our people to go and import instead of producing their own product. Not that they don't have the ability to produce, not that they don't have the brain to think of this. But they feel it is more better for them to import and the corporate here rather than to produce it in this sector. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Prince from Duse, for that wonderful contribution. I think he was of the school of thought that you earlier came up with, that we need to discourage importation by raising the cost of import duty so that we will be able to encourage our own local production. We have the brains, we have everything, but the system doesn't permit you to thrive when you'll be left with no option rather than to go import. So I think the government needs to do more in terms of giving or providing enabling environments for businesses to thrive, and we should encourage our local manufacturers. But a lot of government policies that need to come up to really make that to be a reality.
So we were talking about the federal government targeting 12 billion naira from new vehicle tax, and how that would translate into sort of like an obscurity of what we already have with our businesses, even though it's a good revenue generating avenue for the government. What exactly does that look like for a general average Nigerian who is trying to drive his small car every other day, right? So having to pay 1,000, it's a small amount of money, but
that's what I was about saying.
It's a small amount of money.
So we shouldn't talk much
we are
about it.
already
Nigerians
paying.
will pay.
Do you know how much I paid for my car? Almost 16,000. When I went to renew my papers, I was pained. I was extremely annoyed. So you now want me to pay 17,000 naira? It's annoying. It really
but
is annoying.
The reality here is that this issue of vehicle proof of ownership is that most times you see people carrying papers of vehicles. Yeah, the papers are for the vehicle, they are valid, not expired, but it is not their name that is on it, and they own the vehicle. So if at all you own the vehicle, you need to reassure security, especially security operatives, that yes, this vehicle belongs to me. You have to continue to renew it. If it is yours, on a yearly basis, you renew that particular one, that ownership, proof of ownership.
But it doesn't.
If you buy another one, then you go and do change of ownership. But this one is to prove, to further attest that yes, this belongs to you. So you have to do it yearly. 1,000 naira is not much.
I'm not yet to be convinced.
Generation scheme for the government.
I'm not convinced yet with the relevance of this particular policy. But hey, I'm one out of a million other Nigerians.
And yes. I'm sure our listener also would want to have their own say on this particular issue. Do well to call the studio line.
0700 010 961 961. That's our WhatsApp and call number. Let's know what you think about this new vehicle tax, where you have to pay 1,000 naira from proof of ownership, right? So how exactly do you feel about this? Do you think this is a duplication of all the other documents that we already have as a car owner? Right? So let's know your thoughts. 0700 010 961 961. Moving on to another headline.
All right, let's take a look at this. Forex turnover in I&E falls 35% to 13.11 billion US dollars in first half. You know, we just entered the second half, so certainly review will be released and indices will be coming up in terms of first half review of our indices. The foreign exchange segment of the economy was marked by downward trend in the first half of the year, that is 2023, reflected in the 35% year-on-year decline in the volume of dollars traded in the investor and exporters window, and also 81% year-on-year depreciation of the value of naira, as well as 7.7% decline in the nation's external reserve. These are quite alarming indices to look into. We talk about dollar, yes, dollarization of our economy. In fact, it's not even Nigeria. In Africa entirely, we have over 33 different currencies in Africa. But if you take one to another country, it becomes relatively useless. But dollar that is not our own, you go to any country in Africa, you can make transaction with, and they value it more. So African leaders need to put on their thinking cap and do something about that. So data from FMDQ showed that turnover in the IIN window fell to 13.11 billion US dollars in the first half of the year, from 20.23 billion in the same period of 2022. So that was a decline, no much business in terms of the dollar. However, Financial Vanguard findings in the transaction data showed that quarter-on-quarter turnover increased by 1.07% to 6.59 billion US dollars in the second quarter of 2023, from 6.52 billion in first quarter. So the issue there, or the decline, came up during the cash crunch era. So that is what this indices is telling us. In the first quarter there was a decline, but in the second quarter there's increase. Yeah, so it was normal to see this.
All right.
But we have month-on-month turnover declined by 3.5% to $2.64 billion in June, from $2.55 billion in May. Consequently, and following the measures introduced, this one of course will also have an impact as a result of the unification and the new government that came on board. Consequently, and following the measures introduced by the Central Bank of Nigeria on June 14, 2023, naira depreciated in the INE window year-on-year by 81% to 769.25 per dollar on June 30th, 2023, from 425 naira 5 kobo per dollar a year ago. This is not a new thing. We know that the unification of naira affected this because there is no longer cap on it. When it comes, we need to come up with month on month. The naira depreciated by 0.2% from 762 per dollar on May 31st. And now to our external reserve. Following the same downward trend, the nation's external reserves fell by 2.86 billion or 7.7% to 34.22 billion US dollars on June 26th from 37.082 billion dollars on December 30th. The decline in the external reserves, according to analysts, was driven by lower foreign exchange inflow from crude oil sales and foreign investment. The analysts were, however, optimistic that the downward trend in the foreign exchange market will be reversed in the second half of the year, citing the impact of the elimination of multiple exchange rates and the reintroduction of willing buyer, willing seller I&E window. According to analysts at FBN Quest Securities Limited, the dwindling fortunes of the external reserves mostly reflect minimal accretion from crude oil sales and, to a lesser extent, limited inflow of imported capital. So we expect that the imminent harmonization of exchange rates, together with the recent elimination of gasoline subsidies, will go a long way to ease the pressure on the gross external reserve. This is something that ordinarily we should have
seen.
We have celebrated. We have celebrated this issue of our external reserve, because at some point when the crude price went up over $100 per barrel, we should have been celebrating, because will have
that would
more
mean more
impact
money
for us.
for us.
Yeah, more money for us. But because we import, there is nothing to be happy about. Quite unfortunate.
Very, very unfortunate. But we're hoping that, with the different policies that we're seeing the government take, we're hoping to see, a significant growth, because we understand that the cash crunch from December into January, into the elections, that really, really affected our take home, right? But we're hoping and praying that right now there's the policies that the government is trying to take on would actually bring a holistic growth in our economy. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be looking at different ways or why it's important to have a remote business. But let's take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Keep it locked.
Headphones on. Headphones on. Microphone in position.
Is in our sauce.